Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Major phone carriers make you sign contracts with rigid data plans to trap you into a kind of forced phonogamy. Sounds pretty insecure if you ask me. At Consumer Cellular, we believe in a more consensual and healthy form of phonogamy, free of contracts and more flexible to your data needs. This way, you stick around not because we force you to with contracts and fees, but because you love our phone plans. Like ardently love our phone plans. Phonogamously. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you? It's Saturday morning, we're recording this, so you're presumably excited to get your first glimpse of the new improved Brighton and Hove Albion before their inevitable mid-season slump.
Yes, I am looking forward to it. We're playing Spurs in the 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday afternoon on a train strike day when we are a club where you can only get to the ground through public transport. So that's going to be fun and games. I'm interested in what's going to happen in terms of the kits because, as a member of the colour-blind world, purple is the same as blue as far as I'm concerned. So Spurs are playing in purple and we're playing in mainly blue with a bit of white stripe added for fun.
Oh, that sounds like it should be a rom-com. Purple is the same as blue, doesn't it? It's interesting, the train strike, because our game with you was called off because of police concerns about the train strike, but they're clearly not bothered about Tottenham fans not being able to get there or turning up en masse in cars. A strange one, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was an additional issue when we were scheduled to play against Palace in that all of the car parks are effectively owned by the university, and it was Freshers' Week. So the university said, we want the car parks because it's going to be full of parents and offspring turning up together. So there was nowhere to park and there were no trains, which added to the fun. Catching the buses, I think, would have been lively.
Can you imagine, Kieran, 30 years ago, saying to a football fan at any club, I'm sorry, your game's off because the first-year sociology students are being dropped off by mummy and daddy. You just it's... Anyway,
game's gone.
It's gone. It's questions, though. We've got a couple of short things to talk about first. Firstly, these are heady times, Kieran, for women's football, the Lionesses in particular. But our lovely listeners may remember several months ago, we spoke to Sophia Axelson, who's a player and one of the owners at Clapton Community FC women's team. And she spoke to us about the difficulties of trying to run a women's team at grassroots level. But she got in touch with us just a couple of days ago to say, actually a rather touching, heartwarming story. Thanks to the hard work and money raising of the Clapton community, the women's team are now playing at the old Spotted Dog Stadium, the iconic old Spotted Dog Stadium. They're the first team to be playing back there, which is good news. And they played their first game in front of nearly 500 people. So considering the difficulties that Sophia talked about, I just thought we should mention the fact that they are back at the ground. And that's a really good crowd for a team at that level. So it's good news all round, Kieran, isn't it? Women's football at grassroots level, as we've said before, is very, very important. It's a force for good in terms of health and fitness for girls and women, and in terms of getting people from all classes and all communities to mix. So I just thought it was nice to start for once, Kieran, with an upbeat, positive story about women's football away from the glare of the Lionesses.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. great news from Clapton, and I think I quite fancy a trip to the old Spotted Dog myself, because I've got Clapton's iconic away kit as part of my collection. It does sound like one of those places where you just go to enjoy yourselves, and I think as football fans, we don't enjoy the football. We enjoy the football, we enjoy post the football, and then it's 90 minutes of anxiety. Unless you are Manchester City and you're 4 or 5-0 up at half time. I still go to matches, and even if we're a couple of goals up, as soon as the opposition get into our half, I'm biting my fingernails. So it's I think it'd be a good day, and you're absolutely right. I think at grassroots level, the women's game is still very fragile because it doesn't have significant resources. There are challenges in terms of facilities, in terms of costings, and so on. And there is so much attention at the upper echelons of the game, which is fantastic. There's no doubt about that. That trying to sort of marry the needs of the national team versus grassroots is going to be an issue going forwards for the women's game.
For new listeners, that iconic away kit is based on the colours of the International Brigade from the Spanish Civil War. And it's a thing of beauty. Kieran, Man United fans are not particularly happy people at the moment, although they did manage to scrape a win against the biggest team in Cyprus just a couple of days ago. But they're particularly unhappy with somebody in London at the moment, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, and I think rightly so. So Manchester United's match at Stamford Bridge, which was due to take place in a couple of weeks' time, I think it's fair to say that the kick-off time has been fluid. We've got Manchester United, who are playing in the Europa League. They're up against Chelsea, of course, who are playing in the Champions League, and the kick-off has been shifted forwards and backs. Sky want it. It's a big fixture. We're not denying that, but the decision has been made at a relatively late point in time that it's going to be at 5:30 on Saturday, and the Met Police have then decided that Manchester United's away allocation of I think it's 2,975 tickets. Is going to be reduced by 700 tickets. But Manchester United have already sold those tickets. Yeah. So, this is a football finance show. So, will Manchester United give refunds? Yes, they will. But on what criteria are they going to choose who are going to be the 700 United fans who miss out? What's then going to happen as far as... we know as away fans that we plan our lives pretty much in advance. In order to get cheap train fares and so on. Well, some United fans will have booked accommodation, some will have booked transportation and so on. Is the refund going to include those costs? And if not, why not? Because there is little excuse, in my view, as to why the decision has been deferred and deferred and deferred. And it's a mess. And it's a mess which is being driven by the broadcasters. They're perfectly entitled to have a say in kickoff times because they've signed a contract to that effect and they pay huge sums of money for the rights to show their matches. But once again, fans are an afterthought and we are being constantly patronised and monetised and manipulated for the benefit of others. And we are the losers in all this. And I know there'll be people making some crass comments, or United fans wouldn't have far to travel and so on. Yeah, that's crap. I know quite a few United fans who go away. They're all local lads. There's no doubting that Manchester United is a global fan base. There's a lot of fans that travel to Old Trafford from a variety of spaces, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as far as their away support is concerned, it's hardcore dreads.
Yeah, well, also, I once travelled on a coach from Torquay with 50 Man United fans. All had very good reasons for supporting Man United. And those 50 Man United fans will be heading from Torquay to Stamford Bridge. And as you say, And as indeed the Man United Supporters Trust says, first of all, how are they going to decide which ticket holders are not allowed in? And secondly, there won't be any refunds of the travel costs. The club certainly won't refund them. The broadcasters won't. The Metropolitan Police probably quite rightly argue that they've told everybody, and the broadcasters know this well in advance, that they have this cut-off time of 4:45 p.m. On a weekend in the capital for policing, where only certain numbers of away fans are allowed after that time, and the clubs knew that, and the broadcasters knew that. So the police, as the club itself, both clubs are acknowledging, aren't really the ones to blame here, because those rules have always been in place. It's the broadcasters who, as you say, have just kicked the kick-off time from pillar to post, and it's the Premier League are getting a lot of money for the broadcasters, Kieran. That's absolutely right. But it's 2,700 Man United fans, and 700 of them are going to be seriously out of pocket, and that isn't right. It really isn't right.
Yeah.
Questions, Kieran. So, what a shame to go from a really good news story to start with to one that's more typical of the modern game. Ian Smith has our first question. And Ian Smith says, whilst we still have the disruption of parachute payments, which distort the competitiveness of the championships, too early in the morning to start trying to say words like competitiveness, could a handicap be placed on clubs that receive these payments based on their predicted salary bill against the championship average? For example, if Fulham are relegated and their average bill for wages is £12 million more than the average, then they start the season on minus 12 points. It's an interesting one, Kieran.
It is an interesting one.
It's not going to happen, but and I think I can see a lot of clubs who are about to be relegated suddenly reducing their wage bill by a considerable amount of money. But
well, can they reduce their wage bill by a considerable amount of money? Because once again, we've just been speaking that the Premier League has a contract with the broadcasters, where the broadcasters effectively dictate kickoff times. If you sign a player on a 4-year contract at 50 or 60 grand a week, you might struggle to get rid of that player after one season in the Premier League, and you've just been relegated because the rest of the world's realised actually he's not as good as his YouTube reel, and there's nobody else prepared to pay him those wages. Now, the vast majority of clubs do have relegation clauses built into contracts, but it will still be a challenge. If we take a look at the position of Fulham in 2020, when they were promoted, their wage bill was 72 million, where the average in the Championship was 35. So, on the basis of Ian's workings, and I have put all of these into a spreadsheet, by the way, Fulham wouldn't have been promoted. I think Rotherham might have been promoted. I ended up with something like that. But it certainly would make things very entertaining. I suspect our good friend Nick DeMarco might be called upon by a few clubs to suggest that this isn't a good idea, should it ever be enacted, to defend those clubs. But the ongoing issue in terms of lack of control of wages in the Championship in particular, that particular nettle has not been grasped now for over a decade, and I don't see a lot of enthusiasm from club owners to try to address it.
Yeah, it's a very good response to our chat with Nick DeMarco, KC, on the last pod. Somebody got in touch to say he reckoned we probably got about £4,000 worth of free legal advice. And somebody else also
10 minutes worth,
or 10 minutes basically. Yeah. Somebody else also pointed out, which it just made me laugh a lot. I was in the pub with some mates the other day, and someone came up who's a fan of the pod. And I love the way people's minds work. It's going, that lawyer bloke, he hasn't thought this through. Because he's put a book out with all the law in it. No one's going to ask him now, are they? I don't think that's quite the part. I can't see that Steve Parish would be representing himself in any future legal case. It's interesting that parachute payments do distort the competitiveness of the Championship, but it's not the case, as people think, that the free relegated clubs always automatically bounce back. It's normally one, sometimes two, but I don't think there's ever been a case when all three of them have gone straight. There probably has been, but we can see Watford aren't necessarily benefiting from the parachute payments in a way that perhaps Norwich are.
And I think you've also got to look at just how well run clubs are independent of parachute payments. And in my view, Norwich, we've had people from the finance team in Norwich on the show, and they do think ahead, and I think they're a very stable club. And of course, there's always there are always disruptors, which will mean that those clubs that have been relegated in the last year or two don't get near promotion, and in fact could end up getting close to relegation. And whilst there's people like Steve Bruce still in the game, that opportunity is always going to be there.
Sorry, now I've got the Steve Bruce Nelly the Elephant song going through my head now. On a similar note, and this is a very interesting question from Ash Nemet. Ash says, what if relegation wasn't such a big issue, maybe even normal, in inverted commas? Say 10 teams went down each year with no loss of income for a couple of years. Chances are they'd come back up in that time frame, and with so many clubs being promoted each season, one or two of the Championship bottom half could sneak in without really overspending. I mean, this touches on a subject that you've talked about right from the start of the pod. Relegation is too big an issue, Kieran, isn't it, in English football compared to, say, Scotland?
It is because what we have in Scotland, we have a gradient, we have a slope. What we have in English football is we have a cliff. We've got a cliff between the clubs that qualify for the Champions League and those that don't, and that cliff is going to get even higher in 2024 when the new UEFA rules are introduced. We've got a cliff between the Premier League and the Championship. We've got a cliff between the clubs in the Championship with parachute payments and those that don't. And then we've got a cliff between the bottom of the Championship and the top of League One, because you get 6 times as much TV money in the Championship as you do in League One. So that's the area that I think does need to be addressed. I think Ash's idea that we make relegation less of a big issue, I think it has some merit. Could we move to 4 up, 4 down? We have that between League One and League Two. So why not have it between the Premier League and the Championship? It would increase the excitement. It would increase the the tension. There's no doubt about that. But I think the much broader issue of parachute payments is that they're not working properly, because I think we've quite often had 2 clubs come straight back up, but I don't think we've ever had 3. But they've ceased to become a parachute, and they've turned into a trampoline for too many clubs, and that is the area that needs to be addressed. At the same time, unless if we're going to try to improve things in the Championship, then we really should be trying to address the issues in the Premier League. Brighton fans are getting excited because we finished 9th last season. Well, okay, it was 9th.
Or as we would call it, the sunlit uplands of 9th, the aspirational 9th. I'd rather we didn't talk about 4 teams being relegated from the Premier League, because that's a touchy subject for us.
Oh, yeah.
We were, when the Premier League did relegated 4 teams one season to reduce the size of it, we were the team that finished 4th bottom. We're also the team that was relegated with the most amount of points from the Premier League. So these are all scabs that I don't want to pick at, Kieran. And you mentioned not enjoying football, Kieran. You're enjoying football a lot more than we are at the moment, let's face it. Some of us are praying for the World Cup, and I didn't think I'd be saying that this time last year. 2 questions about Stoke City, Kieran, which are a team we've mentioned regularly, just because of the strange anomaly that they are owned by people that could buy and sell the rest of the Premier League in their sleep, basically, Bet365. Keith Bonney says, in March this year, Stoke City announced its shareholders had released £120 million worth of loans. I have a couple of questions relating to the release of shareholder loans to football clubs. Firstly, is the release of a shareholder loan chargeable to corporation tax? And secondly, and this is a question that this is a proper accounting question, the likes of which we haven't had for a while. Are there any circumstances in which a football club could find itself liable to pay inheritance tax arising from the release of a shareholder loan?
Right. Thank you for this, Keith. As you can imagine, I went into one of my big books this morning. As far as the first question is concerned, what has actually happened is that Bet365 have been very generous benefactors to Stoke City Football Club Holdings, in fact. And in March this year, they converted a large amount of one of their loans into one share. So they converted it was, I think, based on the figures I've seen, it was a £40 million loan which they converted for one share. And I think they said at the time this was to make the figures look a bit better, and there's no doubt that is the case. The loan was never going to be repaid, so it was effectively an acknowledgement by both Bet365 and Stoke City Football Club that they were never going to be in a position where they had the resources, and therefore let's just call the whole thing off. Is it chargeable to corporation tax? The answer is no, because it's not being treated as a profit or a loss. It's just converting one piece of paper into another. So it has no impact upon the profitability of the club, given the amount of losses that Stoke City have made in recent years. They're never going to have to go and pay any corporation tax for the foreseeable future anyway. With regards to inheritance tax is paid by individuals rather than corporate entities. So therefore, there wouldn't have been an issue from Bet365's point of view, because companies live forever, unless they go into liquidation. Just because the owners of a company dies, the company still has succession and continues in existence. What could be interesting is if a shareholder passed away, and what would happen therefore if those shares were passed on to the offspring or other relations of the person who's just passed away. And clearly, we know that some club owners have. We think about what's happened at Preston over the last year or two and so on. There wouldn't have been any inheritance tax implications for this, because there is something called business property relief. And the aim of the tax system, I know it's easy to be critical of the tax system at times, and some criticism is valid. The aim of the tax system is not to screw things up should somebody pass away. From a business point of view. So if I ran a company which was successful, the shares were worth a lot of money, I've been running that company for a good few years, I passed away, the shares went to my kids, and all of a sudden, you got a massive inheritance tax bill, then the business might fold, because you'd have to sell the business in order to get to pay the tax. So if you've owned a business for at least 2 years and it's passed on to your family, then the inheritance tax issues are pretty insignificant. And that's it. I've not talked tax for 20 years, but I keep put away. It was far too much for serious subject for me. But like most accountants, tax is my favourite 3-letter word ending in X.
Yeah, you may not have talked it for a while, Kieran, but you obviously haven't forgotten how to talk. The technique is still there. Although I have to say that's quite a brutal way to tell me you've not left me anything in your will, Kieran. Corporation tax, Kieran, is that? Hello.
Sorry, that's the chief executive of a football club phoning me up.
Is it really? I assumed it wasn't Finley, because he's not that clever. Corporation tax and business tax, are they the same thing? What's the rate of corporation tax?
I think we'd have to go and pass across this to Mr. Kwasi Kwarteng, because it's something which is a bit of a movable feast. It's 19% at present, and I think the government there was a plan to increase it to 2024. Where that is going to go, it's uncertain. And again, going back to the world of football, this is a much broader issue. That we know that some football clubs do have players who set up companies.
Yeah.
And they end up paying corporation tax at 19% instead of income tax at 45 plus national insurance. But I think we've covered that as a separate topic.
Yeah. And secondly, Kieran, a loan that's never going to be paid back. Firstly, it's the sort of loan that I take out, but a loan that's not going to be paid back is a donation, isn't it? Does that not change things for FFP or tax purposes, or?
No. I think by converting it into shares, you effectively circumvent that because it's treated as neither. It's not treated as income and it's not treated as a cost. Now, when clubs did try to treat it as income, and this happened with Queen's Park Rangers in 2014. People may recall that Queen's Park Rangers were promoted to the Premier League. They won the playoffs, and they had absolutely busted their way through in FFP. So what they said, we're going to write off some of the loans. We're going to treat it as income. And it took 4 years to resolve the case. And in fact, Nick DeMarco, who we spoke to on Thursday's show, he represented Queen's Park Rangers. Nick is a big fan of the club. And QPR had a big financial settlement on the back of that. So it gets messy, to put it quite mildly, and the accountants and the lawyers have to come to some form of conclusion with regards to the small print on this.
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Christine Bradley is a Stoke City fan. And this is an interesting one, Kieran. Christine points out that Stoke City have switched this season from a high-quality paid-for match programme, which used to cost £3.50, to a free programme. It's still reasonable quality, and you pick it up from various locations within the concourse. Obviously, cost savings have been made from not having programme sellers around the ground, and I assume advertising rates will have increased as circulation may be higher. But is this likely to be cost-effective in the longer term?
I think it's an intriguing one. I spoke to Ian, who is our programme consultant, who's one of the experts. We'll have to get somebody on about, because we could get quite a few questions about programmes. We'll have to get somebody from the world of programmes on the show. I think when I spoke to Ian, he said that from the perspective of people in the programme industry, but also from an information point of view, any printed programme is better than no programme at all. In terms of sort of the level of programme sales, I know at Brighton we sell probably around about 9,000 for a home match. If it's a big match, if we're playing, and let's be honest, our biggest match of the season is Palace.
Yeah, of course.
It
goes for most teams, Kieran. I think you'll find.
Absolutely. It might be 11 or 12,000 again with, when the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool and Chelsea come to town, then you sell more programmes because people want a memento of, what might, ideally is going to be a memorable occasion. So as far as Stoke is concerned, their average attendance is 20,000 this season. So therefore, from a paid programme point of view, I would imagine they're probably selling, 4, 5, 6,000 per match. You multiply that by £3.50. It's an interesting one. The thing about a programme these days, and I think you and I both grew up in the era of paying sixpence for a programme, where you got the guesswork in terms of the who would be the starting 11. You'd be told the name of the referee. you might get a favourite meal and why I like Phil Collins from one of the players, and they were pretty dry things. Yeah, they weren't particularly attractive. The world of programs, the quality of the content has hugely improved, and. I think the danger of Stoke's approach is that in order to address the cost issue, the proliferation of adverts that is likely to arise will overwhelm any other content, and therefore you just end up with, I've got 40 people advertising, and it becomes not a football program, it becomes an advertising brochure for local businesses. And under those circumstances, you might as well just go and dole out the team sheets. On a positive, Stoke certainly recognising that there are fans that want something, but we'll have to wait and see. It's better than scrapping the programme altogether and just having something on the club website.
Yeah, the programmes used to tell you not only the name of the referee, but his hometown as well.
Yes.
Some bizarre reason. So I can't hear the name Graham Poll without saying Tring in my head. I've got an idea. If Brighton were to include, say, a couscous casserole recipe in each programme, they'd sell every copy. I don't know if there is a couscous casserole, but I just like the pleasing alliteration of it. I missed, there used to be a stall. It wasn't even a stall at Sellers Park. It was a hole in the wall, basically, where a little old fellow used to sell all the away programmes. So
I remember those. Yeah,
if you missed an away game, you just go down and buy it. Because of course there are many people, Kieran, like you say, who would be bereft if there was no match day programme to take home and put in their folder. John Vince has a question about a subject we have discussed, but I'm always happy to revisit it. John Vince, who's a Palace fan, I have to say, it says, with your love of talking about Scottish football and the always excellent Neil Doncaster when he appears on the pod, could the Scottish leagues ever go back to its original format? Because in its present format, we all know that teams in the SPFL mainly rely on the income for the visit of the Big Two and maybe a local derby or two.
Yeah, I spoke to somebody in Scottish football about this earlier this morning, who said the answer to this question is simple. It's down to the clubs. If they want an 18-team division, and I was looking at the Scottish League in 1973-4, and it was great to see so many teams. It will then become reality. It is very much in the hands of the clubs itself. But this person then said, it's very difficult to see any circumstances where the following would be more attractive than the status quo. To either clubs, to broadcasters. We've spoken about broadcasters. They want, in an ideal world, four Celtic versus Rangers matches brings more eyeballs in a season. And also, in respect of for those clubs that are in the Premiership, the fans as well, because they get the opportunity to see. If you move to an 18-team league, there would be fewer big games. There'd only be 2 Edinburgh derbies, and I think the other issue that has been, I think this is a much broader issue as far as Scottish football is concerned. They've tried to address it by splitting the leagues, but if you were 8th and you were playing the team that was 13th in an 18-team league after Christmas, who's going to attend? You're not going to get any. You're not going to get any walk-up fans. So I think there would be an impact upon attendances. They have tried some innovative ways to address the fact that Scottish football isn't competitive. We've got the two Glasgow clubs who have finished first and second every season in which they've both been in the division, with very, very few exceptions over the course of the last 20 to 30 years. And that means trying to get fans of other clubs to have some meaningful interest, unless they are in danger of relegation, is actually more of a challenge.
Yeah. Of course, as we always say, there are those Scottish fans who say that the English Premier League is increasingly less competitive every year as well. Do we know, does the Scottish Premier League have the same sort of voting system as the English Premier League does, with a straightforward 14-club majority? Is there a similar system in Scotland?
I think in Scotland you need at least an 11-1 vote.
Right, okay.
So it's because it's. I think there is slightly more politicised in Scotland with regards to certain elements.
Really? Yeah, I presume that 11-1 reflects the fact that there are two clubs who would probably disagree with each other on everything, so that probably makes sense. Mark McCartney has an interesting question. I like this one. I like all our questions, let's be fair. But Mark McCartney says the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was built to also accommodate NFL matches as well as football. Currently, 2 NFL matches per season are played at the stadium. Is just 2 games a season worth the cost of having the stadium configured to accommodate NFL, or has it been built in the hope that they will one day host an NFL franchise team in North London?
I think as far as the people involved at Spurs are concerned, is that they have been trying to future-proof the stadium, and the very fact that Mark's referring it to as the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is intriguing, because the Spurs have put so much effort in the stadium not being referred to as White Hart Lane.
Yeah,
because I am anticipating a naming rights deal with regards to the stadium. And what you don't want is everybody to, if it's been called White Hart Lane for 2 or 3 years, the biggest problem you've got with naming rights is if you are second to the table. Nobody, the Coventry Building Society Stadium, I've lost track where we are as far as Bolton are concerned. I think is it Bolton University?
Yes,
but things. I remember it as the Reebok, as the Rico, and so on. So Spurs have really put a lot of effort into some of these things, and one of the things is the pitch. The pitch is retractable. So whilst the deal that they have with the NFL is for a restricted number of matches, there is nothing in theory for a franchise to be awarded. We've had London franchises of NFL in the past. Spurs would certainly put themselves forwards to host that London franchise for the NFL. And all of this is done without upsetting the groundsman, who, as we both know, is one of the most important people at a football match. I was watching some YouTube clips, as we all do, from matches in the 70s and 80s, and you don't realise the amount of progress that's been made in terms of pitches. It is, it was rolled mud. There were divots which you could lose a leg in quite easily in the old days, and the groundsmen and the skills that they have and the level of professionalism that goes into pitch maintenance is amazing these days.
You might lose a leg in. You could lose Dennis Wise in some of those divots. It's the naming rights thing is interesting, Kieran, isn't it? Because if you're buying the rights to a new stadium, say when Arsenal moved to the Emirates, it's much easier for fans to call a new stadium by a new name. But if God forbid, Selhurst Park was to become something else, Palace fans would always call it Selhurst Park. So if you're buying the naming rights to a ground that nobody's going to refer to it by that name, probably even commentators, that's a different matter, isn't it, for any potential sponsor or naming rights bidder?
It is. You're absolutely right, and that's why it always will be Selhurst Park. It will always be Anfield. It will always be Old Trafford. And if anybody thinks that the Glazers, why haven't the Glazers ever thought about renaming Old Trafford? It's simply because they have, and the reaction that they've had is A, hostile from fans, and B, lukewarm from potential sponsors. I'm not saying it won't ever happen in the future, but whilst I think there can be some very valid criticisms levelled at the upper echelons of Manchester United, there are still people at that club who hold the club's ideals close to their heart, and I think they would put up objections as well.
Yeah, well, as Mike Ashley found out to his cost as well when he was it sportsdirect.com.
Yes,
St James's Park is always going to be St James's Park, whatever you try to do. Our next question comes from Will Dyer. And Will says, as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, finding a football team can be difficult for many reasons, which the brilliant Channel 4 show that Kieran was part of highlighted very well. Whilst on this search for a team, I came across the London Unity League, a league of 10 teams with a focus on LGBTQIA+ inclusion. And this got me thinking, are there other leagues of this type? that focus on a particular community? Do these leagues have to be within the football pyramid and regulated by the FA in the same way that most other clubs are? And if the answer to the above question is no, could this league or others like it prove a competitor to traditional leagues? Now, I know, Kieran, in South London, there's a league for South American nations, which is always good to visit. There was a league, unfortunately short-lived, for teams with players with mental health issues. So this is a very interesting question from Will, isn't it? And you were that Channel 4 show you were part of was very interesting.
Yes, yeah, it was intriguing because the guys that recorded the show, that developed the show, that they looked at a variety of stakeholders, and even since that show went out, which was just think about 12 months ago, we have seen progression in that. Some players have. We've got a player coming out at Blackpool and so on, and we've got a referee who's come out, and the reaction within football has been positive, which is what it should be. It's not an issue in the women's game, so therefore, if it's not an issue in the women's game, why should it be an issue in the men's game? It's always been my view. But there are leagues now. Everything ultimately comes under the umbrella of the FA, but many leagues are not part of a necessary pyramid system. So we've got leagues which are sometimes related to faith. So we've got the Maccabi GB Southern Football League, for example, and that allows if you are from a particular background or faith or so on, this does give you some benefits in terms of fixture allocation. So if it's Hanukkah taking place and the people don't want to play during Hanukkah, or if you've got a league which is based on mainly Muslim-based clubs, they could say do things. We've got Ramadan and so on. Yeah. So I think that does show that there is a demand, there's an interest for it. There's also leagues in terms of professions, because I used to play in the Manchester Chartered Accountants Sunday League. Wow. And the standard of football wasn't very good, but we were always very up to date as to who'd paid their subs. So that was very good.
I imagine the conversation in the pub afterwards sparkled.
You can, absolutely. And we've got specialist clubs. So I think many people will have heard of Sands FC, which was set up for men who had lost children. And I was watching Welcome to Wrexham last night with the Baroness, and it's
you know how to show her a good time, don't you?
Oh, she loves it. She loves it because it's not about football; it's about people. And
she tells you she loves it.
She does, yes. As she goes on a fourth prosecco, it's only 26 minutes long. How come you get 4 proseccos that quickly? And they were talking to one of the players, and it was heart-wrenching stuff, because he and his partner, they were expecting a child, and the child was born sleeping. And they posted the photographs of the hand of the child, and it was and then you realise football is not about football is more than football, we are blokes. We both know the one thing that we are absolutely terrible at is opening up and having specialist clubs such as Sands, where blokes who have been through this similar issue, and of course, if you've been through such a loss, and I haven't, but how do you express yourself? Because we are conditioned to say, well, I've got to be there. I'm there to hug my partner. I've got to go and put on a brave face and so on. When inside you're just a complete mess. And to be able to talk to other people that have been through a similar process and to come together in a football club, I think things like this are absolutely fantastic.
Excuse me. Sorry, I'm a bit. I'm just getting over a cold, so I'm a bit bunged up today, everybody. 2 friends of my acquaintance started a charity in the northeast called Walk for Louis. For a similar reason, they provide little chests to hospitals. So when people do lose a child, or the child is born sleeping, as you say, they can put a lock of the hair or a little memento into the chest to take with them. So, as you say, it's a very sensitive issue, which almost makes me reluctant to ask the next question, which I think is simultaneously one of my favourite questions and also one of the oddest questions we're ever going to get. I'm not setting that as a challenge to our listeners, but this, every now and again I say I love this question because it highlights something really simple but obvious that we've all been talking about. Not this one. This I can recall no conversations in any pub pre-game about this one. But it comes from Sean Ford.
Yes.
And Sean says, I recently discovered that my club, Leyton Orient, are the only club left in the Football League with stanchions in their goalposts. All 71 other clubs in the EFL have converted to the taut, box-like goal nets, whereas the Orient nets dangle freely to the floor. Are there any financial benefits to keeping the old-style nets? Is there an FA ruling the Orient missed? I'm sorry for laughing, Sean, but it's a really good question. But it's just I've been laughing on and off ever since I first read it. I have to say, because I've been asking friends, Kieran, whether there are any financial benefits to keeping the old style nets, but I came up with a blank. So I'm hoping you can clarify.
Yeah, the way that Sean's managed to get a financial angle into this is absolutely brilliant. If you go on to the FA handbook, there is sort of a quasi history of goals and goal posts and goal nets and so on. So the FA did have a ruling because again, we're both old enough to remember, Parks football where you had hooks on the goals. Yeah. So hooks have been banned for a significant period of time because they were pretty lethal. Yeah, you can get yourself a really nasty injury with regards to those. Then there were issues in terms of goalposts falling over during the match and so on. But when it comes to the lack of stanchions, I'm not aware of any particular rule with regards to this. I can only presume that Orient have done it because their groundsman's quite happy with stanchions, and I think you're there's less chance of a ghost goal with the new type of nets,
like Clive Allen.
Clive Allen. Oh yeah. That was a scandal in the playground, wasn't it? For about 3 or 4 days afterwards.
Yep. Clive Allen scored a perfectly good goal against Coventry, which bounced back off the stanchion, wasn't given.
Yep. So I think it's done for aesthetic rather than financial reasons. So I'm not aware, Sean, of any financial link. I don't think there's an FA ruling with regards to this, though.
Yeah, 2 things off the back of that, which is fairly amazing when you think about it. Firstly, hello Finley. I would make Premier League players carry the crossbar out before a game, and then carry it back again, just to see which of the pampered Premier League players refused. Like every Sunday League team had a player who said, "I'm not carrying the crossbar; it's not my job." So I'm so excited about that. I've forgotten what the second thing. Oh yes, Sean Ford. I'm hoping that Sean Ford has won 20 quid from his mates who were sitting in the pub several months ago going, they will never read that out. There is no way, Sean, in the world that they are going to read that question out. But we did, and it brought a little joy into our lives. So thank you for that, Sean. Our last question comes from, and it did make me wonder how long our waiting list for questions is, because it's about something that happened in 2009. Thomas Hayward says, I've only just discovered about the 2009 Notts County takeover scam involving Sven-Göran Eriksson. Can you give us a brief overview of what and how it happened from a finance point of view? This was a huge story at the time, Kieran. It is worth revisiting, I think.
Yes, yeah, and what I would say, Thomas, I would highly recommend the $1 Trillion Conman podcast, which was devoted to this. Effectively, there was a fraudster. And there was a fraudster who set up a company called Munto Finance, which claimed to have generated a lot of money through mining. I think the mines were in North Korea. The mines never existed, by the way.
No, yeah.
And they recruited they recruited Sven as the director of football, and then Kasper Schmeichel was there. Sol Campbell turned up, and people were going, "What's Sol Campbell doing there?" It was just an amazing period of time. So as always with con men, they are persuasive. They come across as sincere. You can't see what's in it for them to begin with, and it involves lots of offshore activity, Jersey, Bahrain, Dubai, loads of false promises, and so on. So what happened was that this guy effectively pitched to the old owners, tried to get a controlling interest, and then went to people. There was even talk at one stage of David Beckham coming out of retirement and playing for Notts County, and it was just sheer lunacy. But it's what happens with people who want to make money. If they're not doing it in football, they're doing it in various other aspects of life. So it was this strange guy called King who claimed to make money on the stock market and mining and so on, and he claimed to have loads of money which he didn't have.
The trouble is, Kieran, that's still a common occurrence in football, and also his circumstances are not that different to actually genuine club owners. So it seems to me that football's an ideal world in which a con artist could operate.
Yeah, and what you do under those circumstances is that you acquire a business which appears to be legit. Well, it is legitimate. The football club was legitimate, and then you use that as a vehicle to enter contracts and to run up loads and loads of debt. And this is what's happened. And when I think when it was investigated, they ended up the debts were around about 7 million, and the guy that was involved, I think he's now in prison. Yeah. Due to various misdemeanors. So, for the full details, because it would be a 40-minute spiel on here. Just go to $1 Trillion Con Man, and you'll get the story. But it's one of those things you go, no, this is fiction. This is fiction, but it ain't. Yeah.
If only there was some way of investigating these people before they took over a club, Kieran, eh? You'd think they'd put some kind of rule in place, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, and the existing rules don't seem to be working perfectly. So if perhaps with some sort of independent regulator, we might be able to make more progress.
Well, the existing rules basically are you in prison? No. Yes. Well done. Here's your football club. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod, then go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. Apologies to all of those of you who had to bet on the independent regulator not being mentioned and thought you'd got through the whole pod without that happening. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, as ever, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you so much for the feedback, everybody, and also for the very kind words you said about Nick DeMarco coming on the show. We were chuffed to get him, and he was very open with us, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. The fact that it was ended up as a 90-minute show. We're flexible. You always take the dog for a slightly longer walk. So Patreon for just for as little as £1 a month, one way of showing some positive vibes. But you don't have to go down that route if you don't want to. I appreciate times are tough for us all. One of the ways you can help the show is to go onto your podcast app and leave us a review. And if you think we're worth 5 stars, then we're always happy to get it. I think we're averaging 4.9, which
is not bad,
which is pretty damn good. So thank you very much for all that. It doesn't matter what you say in the narrative. By all accounts, it's the Apple algorithm reads the stars. So you could rather say you would prefer to have the show hosted by Jason Cundy and Ted Bundy. And it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to me or Kevin. I think that would be quite an opinionated show. I'm not sure I'd listen to it myself. I'll be a perfect guy. Well, but I'd certainly listen to the first 5 minutes. And by all means, say what you want.
It'd be quite a difficult sell to Jason Cundy, that one, from his agent, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah, I'll do it. Who's the other bloke? Oh, right, okay. I'll tell you who I want to co. I want Sean Ford, Leighton Orient fan. I want him to host a stanchion special of the podcast. That's what we need. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.